I mean, I'll start with you, Bart, because you're very outspoken on this. What do you think? I mean, what are we missing out on nutrition? Where are we getting it wrong? Because clearly we are. I mean, everybody in the damn world is fat and sick and depressed and miserable. What are we doing wrong fundamentally? And, perhaps how do we change that?
Yeah, I mean, basically at the end of the day, there are a lot of people running around who have opinions about nutrition and are quite happy to espouse those opinions to anyone that will listen on the YouTube. And I found myself quite often, even more so recently, saying, well, look, opinions are a lot like anal orifices, aren't they? In that most people have got one and mostly they're full of excrement. And so really I'm trying to be the sane voice in the wilderness who is saying the same message. And you'll notice my message over the last 5 years has not changed, not one jot. I have not, oh, sorry, I was wrong. Now I'm going to change my mind and say you've got to eat 400 grams of fruit a day or something stupid like that. The answer for human beings, for the vast majority of human beings in terms of diet, absolutely is 100% carnivore. And every percent deviation away from that 100% carnivore will net you probably a 10% penalty on your health. So by the time you're a 90% carnivore, you might as well not bother, is what I have found in general with people. It's not one of those things that you can negotiate with. I wish it was. It's not one of those things where, oh, I'll just do this much and no more. So for the vast majority of people, the answer is 100% carnivore, no plant material, no fiber, no starch, no sugar, nothing that wasn't an animal or isn't an animal.
Interesting.
And there are one or two people that will differ from that in a very, very small way because of injuries that they have done to themselves with poor diet in a previous life. There are one or two people who did better on somewhere between 20 and 50 grams of selected carbohydrate a day, purely because their thyroid is shot, basically. And then we got to get those people back on track. Once we've done that, then we can get them towards the right end in terms of diet. But what attracted me about this community that Scott and Annabelle have put together is that they're bringing in the holistic view of, okay, yes, there are some practical steps like diet and exercise that we need to do to look after ourselves, but almost no one is talking about the mental side of it, the mental training, how to get our thought processes right, how to get control of our situation by getting control of our fight and flight situation. And that's the difference here.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Now, I'm just, Bart, because you mentioned it, and I know I want to focus on this angle that you guys are doing with the brain retraining and that type of stuff, because it's sort of fascinating. I'd like to get into more of that, but you had mentioned, because this is very controversial, and as we know, there's people that are promoting, carnivore is not what we want to do. We want to eat, 100, 200, 300 grams of fruit and honey and stuff like that. And, we know where we're going with that. But, I mean, you're obviously don't think that's the way to go. You think that's problematic. Why do you think that? Why do you think some people, you think no one should do that? Or can some people do that? Or why do you think that's less optimal in your mind?
Well, we know absolutely, Shawn, that carbohydrates, for the most part, for the vast majority of humanity, are contraindicated. We know that there is no place for exogenous carbohydrates in the diet. Carbohydrates above a certain level in the blood, in the interstitial fluids, is absolutely immediately toxic and glycating to the tissues. And if you look at Mr. Fruity Honey Boy, and you look at videos made by him 2 years ago, and videos made by him this month, you will see what appears to be 20 years of physical aging on that boy's face. And he'll then turn around and claim that, oh, well, my A1C is fine, my A1C is fine, my FBG is fine. Well, your A1C won't pick up glycation damage from fructose. It is glucose specific. So, of course, it shows up as being fine, because the vast majority of the 400 grams of carbohydrates that boy is pouring down his neck every day is fructose. So it's going to be invisible to the A1C testing. However, it's not invisible to the naked eye. You look at the video and you go, goodness me. Now, you can say, sure, he's been in the sun a lot, but there's no way that what we're seeing on that boy is sun damage over 2 years. There is very serious physiological damage being done by the fructose. So that's the first reason. The second reason is he's getting away with that in terms of fatty liver, in terms of adiposity, triglycerides, etc., at the moment because he is so physically active. 3 or 4 hours a day of surfing, and then weight training on top of that. At some point, he's 45 now, at some point that slows down to some degree. Unless he's a machine like Dr. ShawnBaker that never slows down, in which case, most people are going to slow down at some point. And at that stage, it's going to catch up with him in terms of that as well. It's a ticking time bomb. It's absolutely the wrong thing to do. And the reason he started doing it was purely because he had an electrolyte disturbance causing muscle cramping, restless leg, palpitations, poor sleep, adrenal axis problems, melatonin problems, all of which were a result of eating 3 or 4 meals a day with insufficient protein instead of one big whack of protein a day, and piling in liver on top of liver on top of liver, and then adding freeze-dried liver on top of that as well because of his relationship with that completely natural individual that he was in bed with business-wise for a while. And so we had copper toxicity as well, in my mind. And that was what he did wrong. He did it wrong, Shawn. He never really was a carnivore. That's basically what it boils down to. So sugar is not the answer. The answer is tidy up your carnivore diet, do it properly. And that does not involve huge amounts of liver, and it involves eating one big whack of protein a day. Yeah.
Obviously a lot of people would push back against that and say, hey, look, we've got populations throughout the ages, the Japanese that eat all this rice, and, these people that have lived for centuries and centuries eating carbohydrates, and they didn't have obvious signs of certainly obesity and some of these chronic diseases. How do you respond to that sort of argument?
Yeah. There is a genetic propensity, especially like for the Asian populations you're talking about there, that they seem to have adapted quite well to rice, it having been a staple for so many centuries. Generally, those folk have tended in previous generations to be a lot more active as well, and a lot more physical work, that kind of stuff going on, which does tend to offset some of those things until later in life, at least. The one thing that they will not be getting away with will be the damage to their tissues by the glycation of the glucose and the fructose, which is becoming appended to their protein structures and their fat structures slowly and steadily over years. It's one of the most insidious forms of aging, I think, that we see in both Eastern and Western populations. When you look at people who have been carnivorous for any decent period of time, I'll give you 2 examples. One is a mate of mine called Richard Rodriguez, or Rick. Mm-hmm. He's been carnivore for 40 years. He's in his mid-50s. You'd take a look at the boy and you'd go, he's maybe in his early 30s or mid-30s at most. Doesn't have a grey hair on his head or in his beard or anywhere. Stands bolt upright, does a physical job every day of his life, is strong, tall, lithe, great posture, all of that. Great skin, no sign of aging, no wrinkles, in his mid-50s. And then recently we've become aware, thanks to Dr. Anthony Chaffee, of a woman who is in her 80s, mm-hmm. who is a rancher who still works a full day of work every day as a rancher, doing physical yakka and all of that. And she has been carnivore for 67 years. And she looks to be no more than 50. She's in her 80s.
Yeah, I saw that interview.
Yeah.
That was quite impressive.